I said he hadn't made me finish in years in front of my family. His reaction shocked us. So this happened 2 weeks ago, and I still can't believe I let the word slip out. For context, I'm 29 years old, and I've been married to my husband, Josh, who is 31, for 5 years. On the outside, it probably looks like we have the perfect marriage. He's a good guy, and he's kind and helpful around the house, and everyone adores him. We don't fight much. Our day-to-day life runs smoothly. We even have what most people would consider a healthy sex life. Frequent, regular, and no major complaints. But here's the thing. I haven't enjoyed it for years. It's not about quantity. It's about the fact that none of it feels real to me. I've been faking it every single time for the past 3 years. I don't know exactly when it started. I just remember feeling underwhelmed one night thinking it would pass, but it didn't. And instead of addressing it, I kept going with it, smiling, performing, pretending like everything was fine. I didn't tell him, not even once. I convinced myself it would hurt his feelings or damage what we had, so I kept up the act. I made it seem like I was satisfied when I wasn't. And then 2 weeks ago, I let it slip. Something minor led to a conversation, and I said something I shouldn't have. And what he did at that moment made me realize that I made a terrible mistake, and it turns out it was something I couldn't take back. It wasn't meant to be a confession. It wasn't planned. It just fell out. And now things are suffocating, and I don't blame him because I kept a lie going for years. And I said it like it didn't matter, but still, he thought he would understand my reasons for not being about it at first. Then came family dinner. My family, not his. Everyone was there. My parents, my siblings, their spouses. We were eating, drinking, having the usual chatter, and as always, the conversation eventually turned to Josh. How lucky I am, how amazing he is, how every woman would kill to have a man like him. It's always the same script. My dad calls him son. My mom cherishes him like he's the best thing that ever happened to me. It's like I'm the outsider and he's their golden child. I just sat there, chewing, smiling, nodding when expected. But inside, I felt so tired and frustrated. They don't see how lonely it feels to be married to someone who doesn't fully get you sexually. They don't know how much I've had to bend myself just to keep the peace and to keep the image alive. I kept thinking, if only they knew. If only he knew what it felt like to constantly fall short of real connection, to be praised for being perfect while I'm quietly suffocating. I was so frustrated. That night, I realized I wasn't just tired of pretending with him. I was tired of pretending with everyone else, too. As they went on with the conversation, one topic naturally led to another, and somehow we ended up on relationships and marriage. It wasn't planned topics, it randomly just flowed. Then my sister, the one who isn't married and never really talks positively about the idea of it, made a joke. She said she heard that married life kills your sex drive. It was one of those throwaway comments meant to stir up laughter, and it worked. Everyone laughed. My dad shook his head. My mom chuckled, but tried to sound hopeful. The rest jumped in, saying things like, "That's not true," or "It depends on the couple." Then, without missing a beat, she turned to me. Still in that playful tone, she said, "Is that true for you guys too?" Then added, "I mean, you guys are the perfect couple, right? So whatever you say will decide how I feel about this whole marriage thing." She was joking, clearly. The whole conversation had been open, light, and no one was being judgmental. Everyone there was mature enough to handle a little honesty, although it was weird. But it still hit me differently. The way she said it, and the way they all turned to me, waiting, and it was like I had been chosen to speak on behalf of marriage itself. I should have laughed it off, played along, deflected, and moved on. Instead, I scoffed and blurted out, "Stick to your opinion, my husband hasn't made me finish in years." The words just came out with no filter and no thought. It was just frustration finally slipping. The room went dead silent. You could hear the forks clink against the plates. My sister choked on her wine, and my mom's face dropped, frozen in shock. My dad started coughing awkwardly, probably unsure if he heard me right. And Josh, he didn't flinch. He just looked at me, then smiled. But what he did next shocked me to the core. I honestly didn't mean to humiliate him. It just came out. The words were out of my mouth before I could even process them, and now there's no taking them back. Yes, it was the truth, but I didn't mean for it to come out that way, there, in front of them. It wasn't about revenge or trying to make him feel small. It was just years of silence breaking through at the worst possible moment. The thing is, Josh always assumed that because we were having sex, everything was fine. He never asked questions, never checked in. He thought frequency meant satisfaction. But I've walked away from so many nights feeling more frustrated than before it started. It's like going through the motions and pretending it's enough. It's exhausting. And I hate admitting this, but around that time, I started thinking about my ex more often, not emotionally, just physically. We didn't work out for many reasons, but in bed, it was a different world. He knew my body. It was instinctive with him. I didn't need to explain anything or fake reactions. There was a spark I haven't felt in years, intense, raw, and real. I try not to romanticize it, but my body remembers what that felt like, what it felt like to be seen and understood, even just physically. And then being with Josh, who doesn't even notice when I don't finish, who never asks, who's comfortable while I go numb. It's not that he's a bad person. He's not. But the gap between us had grown so wide and it was starting to consume me. I was deeply frustrated and I didn't even know what to do with it. The silence between us was growing heavier, but the thought of having that conversation with my husband made my chest tighten. It's not that I didn't care. I did. I didn't want him to think I didn't appreciate his efforts or all the ways he's shown up for me over the years. He was never really a sex person to begin with. I knew that. I was the one who pushed for more intimacy, who initiated, who slowly brought that side out of him. And now to confront him, years later, to talk about this level of dissatisfaction, it felt cruel to say it out loud. Telling him the truth would cut deeper than I think he could handle. His ego, though subtle, is fragile. He takes things to heart in a way that lingers. He would spiral, question everything, maybe even resent me for bringing it up after all this time. So I didn't say anything, and not to protect myself, but to protect him. I thought being quiet about it was safer. At some point, I started masturbating regularly, doing whatever it took just to feel something close to satisfaction. I'd spend nights in the bathroom or wait until he fell asleep, using toys or just my hands, anything that worked. And honestly, it was far better than what Josh ever managed to give me in bed. That realization alone made me feel detached, like intimacy with him became just another task to check off. No emotional connection to it, but just another routine. So when my ex reached out, saying he missed me, it hit a nerve. We hadn't spoken in a long time, and I had genuinely moved on, or so I thought. But at that moment, I saw a door open and didn't hesitate to walk through it. We started hooking up here and there. No emotional strings. It was just a physical need. He still knew exactly what to do. I stopped caring about what Josh did or didn't do in bed. As long as I was getting what I needed elsewhere, I didn't feel as angry about what was missing at home. It was a messy justification, I know. But at the time, it felt like survival, like reclaiming something I had been denied for too long. I'm not proud of my actions, but it's what I needed. A man who's confident, experienced, and knows how to satisfy me. My husband was the opposite in every way. I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't keep pretending. I needed more, and eventually, I stopped feeling guilty for wanting it. That one comment at dinner wasn't just a joke gone wrong. It was the truth spilling out after too long. And now, I'm the one left sitting in the mess. Anyways, after I made that statement, my husband just smiled and said, "That's funny, but I guess someone else makes you finish, so stick with him." I was horrified by his words. I didn't know what he meant by that. My mom gasped. Then he stood up, placed his napkin on the table, and said, "Thanks for dinner, everyone. I'll be filing tomorrow." My mother gasped the moment he started to walk out. The entire room paused, and everyone was ready to ask what was happening, but I couldn't let him just humiliate me like that and walk away as if I had done something unforgivable. I got up, chased after him, and blocked the door. Everything inside me was burning. Anger, shame, heartbreak. Yes, I said some things in front of everyone that maybe I shouldn't have. I crossed a line, sure. But throwing the word divorce around like it was a casual option, like my mistake was enough to erase everything we'd been through, that was cowardly, and I made sure he knew I felt that way. And I told him that was exactly why I avoided talking about certain things with him. Because every time I tried, he'd either shut down or lash out. He couldn't handle the truth, especially the parts about himself. He wanted to be seen as the perfect man, the one who never needed correction or never needed help. But perfection was a lie, and I was exhausted pretending for him. I had stayed silent for so long about the things he couldn't or wouldn't do as a husband, things that were basic, things that other men did without needing to be begged. And the worst part was people thought he was some ideal partner, while I was dying inside from all the ways he lacked emotionally, intimately, and as a teammate. I told him that it broke me that he could so easily walk away rather than try to understand where I was coming from. Instead of showing any intention to grow, to reflect, to face the parts of himself that needed work, he just tried to flee. I told him, with tears in my eyes, that most women wouldn't have stayed as long as I did. I hadn't been ungrateful. I'd been patient, too patient. But that patience had turned into resentment. I'd bent over backward to make this marriage work, and he couldn't even meet me halfway. I stood there crying because I had given so much of myself to a man who refused to see his own flaws. And the minute I cracked and said it out loud accidentally, the minute I said something that made people know him for who he was, he decided I wasn't worth staying for. I was venting. And I was not being careful with my words, nor was I calm. I was just spilling every ounce of frustration I had kept bottled up for so long. All the things I once convinced myself weren't okay to say to my husband, I said them right there. I didn't filter any words. I didn't even notice how quiet the room had gotten until I stopped talking. That's when it hit me. Everyone was staring. My mother, my siblings, the in-laws. They were all frozen and silent. And then my husband spoke. Just 5 words. Fine, let's have it your way. He pulled out his phone. I didn't think much of it. But a second later, phones around the room buzzed. Mine too. Everyone there received a notification. And then, like a cruel slap to the face, I started hearing it. Moans. It was loud and familiar. My family's expressions twisted in shock as they looked down at their phones. I was confused, so I opened mine, and my heart stopped. It was a sex video of me with my ex. The room spun. Shame wrapped around me like a noose. And at the top of the group chat, my husband pinned a message. A formal apology. He said he didn't mean for my family to witness such filth, but he had no choice. Like he had planned this. Like he wanted to make sure I could never take back what I said by making sure I would never be able to speak again. And in that moment, I realized he didn't just want to leave me. He wanted to destroy me completely. By the time I lifted my eyes from the phone, slowly, like my soul was dragging behind, my husband was already gone. Meanwhile, I collapsed to the floor. My knees gave out. My hands shook. I couldn't breathe. It felt like my world had exploded in front of people I had spent my whole life trying to make proud. The worst part is that I would have sworn on my life that my husband didn't know. There was no single sign, not a change in tone, and not even a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. We had been okay, laughing, talking, even holding hands, just hours before dinner. And nothing about his behavior had prepared me for that kind of moment. I was blindsided. Whatever I had with my ex was a mistake, yes, but it was buried, hidden so deep I believed it would never come up. I never imagined he even suspected, let alone had proof. But now he had turned the tables, humiliated me before my own family. And it worked. My mother's voice cut deeper than any blade when she said she was disgusted. My siblings wouldn't even look me in the eye. The silence in the room was louder than any scream. I wasn't just judged, but I was condemned. I ran out, crying uncontrollably from the shame of being exposed. I didn't know what to do or who to turn to. Like, can you even imagine the shame of your entire family seeing your most intimate moment, and it's not even with your husband? The kind of shame that doesn't just hurt, it destroys. It was like I stopped being human in their eyes. I wasn't a daughter, sister, or wife anymore. I was something dirty, something they couldn't even look at. When I left my family's house that night, I couldn't bring myself to go anywhere. I just sat outside on the curb, crying for hours. My body felt numb, but my chest burned. I didn't even realize how long I'd been there until the wind started to sting my skin, and I finally stood up to go back home. But when I knocked on the door, Josh didn't even hesitate. He told me to never set foot in his house again. And this time, he meant it. The look in his eyes made my heart break into pieces. He said he wasn't joking when he mentioned divorce at dinner. I tried to apologize, to tell him I was sorry, and to plead with him. I told him I knew he only did what he did as revenge because of the things I said earlier at dinner. But he cut me off cold. He said no. This wasn't some dumb revenge stunt. He didn't do it to get even. He said he did it right there in front of everyone because divorcing was the right thing to do and that I was trying to paint him as the bad guy. I was up there crying and playing the victim while making him seem unreasonable for wanting a divorce. He was like after I went and humiliated him in front of everyone, I still had the audacity to act like I did nothing wrong. Like I had a right to talk about his flaws, when I was the one who had betrayed him in the worst that was totally unforgivable by him, and the truth hit hard. If I hadn't gone back to my ex, if I hadn't made that choice, maybe our relationship would have had a chance. And who knows, we could have worked. But then I told him that what crushed me the most was if he knew. Why didn't he say something? Why didn't he confront me? He said he only found out 2 days before the dinner, through my texts. He had been silent since then, acting normal, pretending nothing was wrong because he found it hard to believe I would do that to him, and he had to set a trap and I felt for it. He said he wanted to talk to me about it after the family dinner. He wanted to give me a chance to come clean and face lesser humiliation. But thanks to the way I embarrassed him in front of everyone, I handed him the perfect opportunity. He said it was no longer about trying to protect me in front of others for who I truly was. It became about exposing me, about making sure I felt what he felt. And according to him, that dinner was the most satisfying way to do it. I couldn't believe my ears. Even after everything, I still thought there was a small part of him that would soften, that would hear my apology and show me some mercy. But no, I begged him. I cried. I told him I was sorry over and over again. But that heartless man didn't flinch. He shut the door in my face like I was nothing, like I hadn't once been the woman he loved. He left me standing there, crying. I couldn't call my siblings, not after what happened. I couldn't go back to my parents' house either. How could I, after the disgust in their eyes? I had no one. I walked aimlessly through the streets like I wasn't even alive, just a shell moving through the night. I eventually sat in one place on the edge of some random street corner and cried. Then it started raining and I was completely soaked, my hair, everything. People passed by, staring and some probably judging. Some were maybe pitying. I didn't care. I just sat there wishing the rain could wash away my shame, my sin, the memory of that night. But I knew better. That kind of cleansing didn't exist. Eventually, when the cold became too much and I realized I couldn't sleep on the street, I did the one thing I didn't want to do. I called my ex, and not because I wanted to, but because I had nowhere else to go. When I got to my ex's place, I was soaked, cold, and barely holding it together. I told him everything, that my husband had found out about us, that he had somehow set up a camera and recorded the two of us, without my knowledge. The video captured every detail of our intimacy, and the one that happened just the day before the dinner, while my husband had gone out. If I had known that we wouldn't have done it that day at our place. I hated being caught and exposed, and I hated how my life was in ruins because my husband had sent that video to my entire family. I told my ex that I didn't know what to do, that my husband wanted a divorce and had thrown me out. I thought maybe he, of all people, would show some understanding or support, but all he said was that he didn't know how he could help me. At first he shouted at me. He was angry that I let things get that far, that I hadn't been careful. He reminded me that he had warned me about only having sex at his place instead of mine, that it was risky. But I insisted that day, and now his face was exposed too. He said I dragged him into a mess he never asked for, and now everyone could recognize him. I felt even worse. I told him I was sorry, over and over, but the damage was already done. His anger only made me feel worse. Then he told me I should keep begging my husband, that maybe he'd change his mind. Then he looked at me and said that he didn't know how to help me and that he didn't want to see me anymore, so he wouldn't cause more problems for me. At first, I believed him, but then I asked him if that was really the reason. Or was he just embarrassed of me now, knowing that the video would or might leak to more people than just my family? And then he gave it to me straight. He said yes, that was the truth, that he had reached a point where he didn't want to lie to me anymore, and that when morning comes, I should leave his house and I shouldn't come back. That our relationship, or whatever it was, had done nothing but cause damage, and that he was done. He wouldn't pick up my calls anymore, and he wanted me out. I was shocked. I didn't expect support, but I didn't think he'd discard me like trash either. I was angry, but mostly I was heartbroken. It felt like everyone was abandoning me. My husband, my family, now even him. And honestly, what could I do? If my husband could cut me off so coldly, then anyone could. I had no one. I cried through the night, not just a few tears, full body-shaking sobs that left me empty, the kind of crying where you don't even recognize yourself anymore. I stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep, unable to think, completely unsure of what my life had become. That's why I'm here, sharing this. I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know how to move forward. I'm not proud of what I did. I made mistakes, but the punishment feels never-ending. Still, despite everything, I think I'll try again. I'll go see if my husband might change his mind. Perhaps it might look pathetic, or probably it's pointless, but right now, it's the only thing I have left. Update. I've read a lot of the comments, and honestly, I expected the judgment, but some of y'all really went hard, calling me a joke, saying I'm delusional for thinking my husband would forgive me, and throwing every name in the book at me. That's fine, I can take it. But let's not act like half of you haven't done worse, or wouldn't do the same if you were stuck in a marriage where your needs were ignored for years. Everyone wants to play righteous until the lights are off and reality kicks in. The truth is, most people just don't talk about it. Anyway, there were a few things I left out in my original post, and since this is already a mess, I might as well lay it all out now. For one, I know that I barely communicated about the way I felt about our intimate moment to Josh, but I hinted at a point and I really tried. He just never really cared to ask questions to know if I was satisfied or improved, and just assumed everything was fine. So I didn't cheat because I wanted to destroy my marriage. I cheated because I was tired of leaving that way, and I own that. So after I left my ex's house that day, he did exactly what he said he would. He cut me off completely and blocked my number. No messages, no calls, and nothing. I realized he was really serious. I had nowhere to go. I couldn't go back to my marital home, not with the way things ended. So when my mom called and told me to come over, I thought maybe she had cooled off and was calling to offer comfort or some kind of support. But she wasn't. She had just seen the divorce papers. Apparently, Josh had dropped them off at my parents' place along with my things. That's when I knew he wasn't changing his mind. He was done. So the thing is, when I got to my parents' house, my mother didn't even wait for me to sit down. She was still angry, disappointed, all the things I expected, and she didn't hold back. She showed me the divorce papers, told me what Josh said, and made it clear how ashamed she was, and I stood there taking it. I didn't argue and I didn't cry. I just listened. I knew I deserved it. But the thing is, as much as I knew I messed up, part of me still hoped there was something left to save. I couldn't sit in that house knowing Josh had made the final call without even caring about how it affected me. So I got up and left. I didn't hesitate. I needed to see him face to face. I needed to at least try again. And it's not like he was without fault. His poor performance made me long for it somewhere else. But in the end, I only humiliated myself. When I went to Josh's place, I stood in front of the door, knocked, and banged hard, called out his name more times than I can count, but he didn't open, and he didn't even tell me to leave. He just ignored me like I didn't exist. That hurt more than anything. After everything, after 5 years of marriage, he shut me out completely like I was nothing. I stood there for a long time, until my legs hurt and my voice went dry, but it didn't change a thing. Eventually, I went back to my parents. As angry and disappointed as my mother was, I was thankful she let me stay. She gave me a time frame to get back on my feet and figure my life out. That alone felt like the only mercy I was going to get. But then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, it did. Somehow, the video from that dinner, that humiliating moment where I outed my marriage problems, made it to my workplace, together with my sex video. I knew it had to be one of my relatives, one of the ones who always smiled in my face but couldn't wait to see me fall. Because when I walked into work that morning, the energy was off. People were staring, whispering, and avoiding eye contact. I brushed it off at first, but then my boss called me into his office and sat me down. He didn't even pretend to be professional about it. He just told me that my presence was now a distraction and I was no longer fit to represent the company. He fired me just like that, with no warning, no questions, no chance to speak or even defend myself. That day broke something in me. That was one of the worst days of my life. I left feeling disgusted, and not even at myself at that point, but at them, at everyone who stood there pretending like they were better, like they don't have secrets or mess-ups or moments they're not proud of. Who gave them the right to judge me, to laugh at me like I wasn't human? Hypocrites, every one of them. Now I'm just drifting, moving from place to place, praying that the video hasn't made it there yet, and hoping I can find somewhere to start again. I apply to jobs, show up with my head down, and worried someone's going to recognize me or bring it up. It's a constant fear. And to make things worse, my family hasn't made anything easier. Living with them feels like punishment. They remind me of what I did every single day, in words or silence. Either way, I'm always reminded I messed up. And yeah, we went through with the divorce. It's final now. Josh didn't even blink or flinch, no matter how hurt he saw I was. He let one mistake define our entire marriage. He didn't even think about what led to it, and didn't look back. And you know what? I've decided to move on too. There's no use trying to get love out of a heartless man who never truly loved me from the beginning, and never really saw me, and ever asked how I felt. He never even noticed when I was unhappy. So maybe he was never really in it to begin with. Maybe I was just playing wife to someone who was never husband enough to care.